homelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, no, no. Not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
All right. Hello. Welcome to the show, everyone. You might notice the sound quality is a little odd this week. It's because my computer just updated itself and fucking exploded everywhere into a ball of not working anymore. And my $400 interface is now on the fritz because of very important Windows 10 updates. So, in lieu of our very, very much planned episode expose rundown on Dennis Rodman's descent into madness, we're going to do something different this week. That'll be out later, but I have a friend I wanted to talk to about his experience with the J20 protests and the afterwards trials. I'm Jake Flores, as always. I've got with me Peter Soeller.
Hello.
And
Yes.
Christian Valencia.
Hey, what's up?
Valencio?
With an A at the end.
Hey,
Valencia.
Valencia. Okay, cool.
It sounds like a car dealership. Come to Valencia, Toyota. Okay.
Valencio. That's not a name at all. Okay. So Lino and Barnes. Okay, so I guess like to give a little background information for anyone listening who might be unfamiliar. Tell me a little bit about what J20 is. I know what J20 is because J20 was my 30th birthday.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you got a terrible birthday present.
Oh, yeah. Worst day of my life.
Okay, so January 20th was when Donald Trump was elected, as president. Unfortunately. Not that I like anyone else, but whatever. Alright, so whatever. So Disrupt J20 was the protests that were planned for the inauguration. It was a large coalition of different groups doing different things throughout the city. In the morning there was blockades at checkpoints where people were trying to get in to see the inauguration, consisting of like different blocks. It was like trade union block, feminist block, doing different things at the checkpoints. And then at 9 a.m. there was the black bloc, anti-capitalist, anti-fascist bloc. About 500 people showed up, protest Trump and protest capitalism. Shit happened, whatever. And it ended with the police kettling around 200 people and arresting everyone, charging people with felony rioting, which was then expanded in the superseding indictment where they put additional felonies like, what was it, like 5 counts of property damage each, engaging in a riot, inciting a riot,
And conspiracy.
and conspiracy to riot.
Conspiracy.
Yes.
Good old-fashioned conspiracy. It's a conspiracy.
I like that they think that, Antifa guys were, conspiring against that mailbox you knocked over.
Exactly.
There was a
Yeah.
fucking
And if you know
room.
anything about the organizing that led up to that, it'd be anything but. It's not organized.
Yeah, there's a black and white
was like a
photo
shit
of, a
show.
Starbucks window and, yarn and shit. It's like, we're gonna get the window.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, that was their theory, was that in the organizing meeting, supposedly, they were saying that there was a pre-planned conspiracy to riot, and that it was super structured. In one of my court appearances, they said that I was a field marshal and a general who specifically
You,
gave
sir,
out
are
orders
a
to
field
break
marshal
windows.
and a general.
That's what they said to me. They thought that there was
Commander
people,
Valencia.
yeah, in the Spanish Civil War. Yeah,
They charge you with
So-
being an officer and a gentleman.
Yes.
Or a gentleman and a scholar.
Yeah.
No, they said that there were people called from different parts of the country that were given the job specifically to give orders to the rest of the people in the group, who then somehow, I guess, just knew what to break. Right? You get a conspiracy of 500 people and they're all on the same page. That's pretty impressive, but it's not true.
So the crazy thing about this, they've been doing this since Seattle '99, fucking Bush and the anti-globalization stuff. They've been kettling protesters, specifically black blocs and stuff. What's unprecedented about this thing is that they charged every single person they arrested with six felonies.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
putting all together is like 75 years in prison, which is ridiculous.
Right.
For just being at a protest wearing black.
Yeah, and that was like day one also of like Trump's
it kind of like set the
presidency,
tone
so
of like, oh shit, Trump means business. Trump's gonna like be a fucking Nazi.
Yeah, well, that's what the U.S. Marshals said when they were holding me in federal custody. They were talking about, Trump and whatever, and then they're like, looks like this law and order shit's really working out, right?
the Law and Order shit.
Law and Order, yeah.
That's what Trump campaigned on. Was
Yeah.
Law and Order.
Right.
So.
I thought you were talking about the.
Like the show.
Well, they were going to do an episode about Trump, about the whole grab by the pussy thing of Law and Order SVU.
How'd they even work?
Well, I don't know, because they, Law and Order will make a fake character that's very obviously the person from the story, but they didn't air it because he got elected.
Wouldn't it be more?
Yeah, I
popular
think you
once he
should
got elected?
fucking elect.
Of course.
Yeah.
They're not good.
I remember NYPD Blue had an Antifa episode.
Fucking Law and Order did too.
Yeah.
We did an episode on it on the behind the paywall.
Isn't it like they like cast him as like a patriot, like he's fighting for his country,
Yeah.
The fascists stole my country, and I'm fighting for American values.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah, the Law and Order episode was really bad because it starts with like a Tommy Loren type, and there's like both alt-right people and Antifa like in the crowd at this protest, and then she gets raped, and it's like, was it the alt-right guy stalking her, or was it this white guy with dreadlocks as a barista? And the end of the episode is just like Ice-T basically like closing curtains and saying like, well, we'll never know, Guess everyone is bad all the time now, and there's no answer to anything.
There was violence on many sides, many sides.
We had a lot of fun
There's
tonight.
good people on both sides.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much what the moral of the episode
And
was.
because that happens every time there's like an Antifa event, like people get raped apparently. So that was a good thing to have an episode about, to show like like this alt-right versus anti-fascist stuff that's going on.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't
TV's ridiculous.
money grubbing and opportunistic
Yeah.
and showing your ass that you're just not aware of this age-old thing,
And they're essentially like capitalizing on like all the scandalousness of it. That's like thing that the right wing likes to do.
Yeah. Well, the twisting of the story and the spin is something that's really interesting to me, just as a writer, but as in a journalistic sense, with stuff like J20. Yeah, they get away with finding you with fucking conspiracy and 6 felons and calling you a fucking super soldier colonel or whatever the fuck they called you. That you just told me that because they're able to sell a narrative, and I talked about this a lot with my whole Homeland Security thing. But there's this, you see this all the time. It happened to Sesta Foss, it happens with ICE. Whenever they need to justify an authoritarian state, they allude to a spooky boogeyman of just this organized, terrifying
Borg,
thing.
There's that thing out there, and we are we need this line to protect us.
Yeah.
And we're the line that protects us from the order and the bad thing that's over there on the other side. There's always an other. They have to otherize. That's all the whole thing.
The invading forces, yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, what happened to you at J20 after that?
Well, while I was in custody?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, so, they arrested me, whatever. And the thing was that they brought us to 3 different places. First, the police precinct, then they brought us to, actual jail cell. And in the morning, they brought us to the courthouse, and we were in the custody of the U.S. Marshals. So, what I remember happening...
But you are a marshal.
I'm a marshal. Yeah, I don't get it.
An anarchist marshal, not a U.S. marshal.
Yeah, well, I'm a U.S. anarchist marshal.
You're anarcho-American.
Yeah, so what I remember...
Officer
happening-
Valencia. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
wish I would have gotten my name wrong, because actually that's one of the things you can use to throw out the arrest, or if the... What I was hoping was that my arresting officer's name was not written on the board, because apparently if your AO is not on the board, they don't write their name down. You can throw out the arrest and throw out the case.
Interesting.
That's what I was hoping when I was in jail. But so what happened? What I remember happening to me the most, is probably the worst thing, was when they asked me if I had any allergies or injuries or health conditions, and I remember thinking at the time, should I really tell the swine about my health issues, because they're not on my side, but I guess I foolishly decided to do it anyway. I'm the only thing I have is asthma, and I ended up getting locked in a van for like 2 hours or so, with the heat on, with only me in there. And
After you told them about the
after I
asthma?
told them I had asthma, yeah. So
So do you think it was deliberate?
I think it was deliberate because they had us in the van. They took everyone out in like a pretty orderly fashion, and they left me in there to be the last person in the van for like 2 hours in the heat. And so like I started complaining, and there was cops right outside the van that could hear, but you know they didn't do anything. And yeah, after that they finally brought me to the precinct cell. And at one point, like, we were all bored, and we were like, okay, let's play werewolf. And I guess they saw it on the cameras or whatever, because then they came in, and they're like, all right, this is not what you're supposed to be doing in jail.
What
Get
are you
out of
supposed to
here."
be doing in jail?
And you're supposed to be miserable and reflect on what you've done to society.
Yeah.
So they put us into different cells. They broke us up.
What is werewolf?
Oh,
It's like a road
It's-
trip game or something?
no, I don't think
Yeah,
you
pretty much.
I don't think you can play it on a road trip.
You can play it on a road
If
trip.
you modify it, maybe.
It's like basically like it's like so. There's like you're a group of villagers, and then like it's like a kid. It's like a game the family plays with the kids.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know, you're a group of villagers, and then someone's a werewolf, and then like the werewolf, like you take turn. You go to sleep every night or whatever. Like everyone closes their eyes, and then like the werewolf kills someone every night, and then
Unless someone blocks it. There's like different.
You gotta. The
roles,
game is
yeah.
the goal of the game is the villagers got to figure out who the werewolf is.
Yeah.
It's like
No,
it's
I
like a
follow
family.
you.
It's like a road
It's
trip.
like
family.
Mafia or whatever. There's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
It's
yeah,
very
yeah.
similar to
It's
Mafia,
Mafia,
yeah.
yeah,
It's the
yeah.
same thing, really.
Okay.
We were really bad at playing werewolf and Hood for Justice, right?
Yeah, we were. It was very good. Oh my god.
But yeah, so that's what I remember happening to me the most. And then, like, just the fact that they really didn't feed us or give us water the whole time.
Right.
I probably got, like, one sandwich and a few cookies the whole time I was behind bars.
Mm.
And the only time they gave us water was when we were finally at the U.S. Marshals. At that stage, and they finally gave us water.
Mind you, this is after like the tear gas
Hours.
and the concussion grenade. So like everyone's covered in pepper spray the whole time. They're like
Yeah,
sitting in these hot vans, like handcuffed, ankle cuffed too, in these vans of just covered with pepper
Yeah.
spray, hot vans, and you know it was like the middle of January, so. You think it was like, hey, maybe some nice relief. It was like, no, it wasn't.
it wasn't.
It's like at that point, I was like, yo, give me some snow.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and, you know, what was also funny for me was the U.S. Marshals asking us if we worked for George Soros. Like, seriously.
Dude, the funny thing about these people is that, like, the
It sounds
cops
cliche, but they
Yeah,
really,
these are-
they really did ask
believe
that.
this stuff.
Yeah, the cops are like alt-right. They believe they follow the. We'll get into that later, but like,
Yeah, they believe in, like, that guy who got, taken away for like 6 months. The story about him in The Guardian over Facebook posts was arrested after a police officer listened to an Alex Jones episode, like, about him or something, and then went and found him. Alex
I believe
fucking
it.
Jones. When I talked to the DHS, I was like, why aren't you fucking with him? And they were like, they just kind of blew it off. But the more I think about this, it's like, because they fucking listen to Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They believe this shit. That's
Yeah.
what's kind of crazy about this. Like,
Well, the DHS believe that Rise and Resist and RCP, who somehow are the same things as Antifa.
Red Hot Chili Peppers?
no.
Might as well, they will be.
I'm just kidding.
No, the
They should be locked up.
Revolutionary Communist Party, Bob Avakian's people.
It's a communist party that worships this white guy from the 70s.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah, that's what I said. It might as well be, yeah. No, the DHS. There is a conspiracy theory, primarily circulated by Alex Jones, that was the same thing as Antifa, because they don't really know what they're talking about. That's the
Right.
thing. Everything is Antifa. Everything's communist, whatever. So they said that they were going to launch a civil war November 4th against America, and it's ridiculous because if you actually looked at the actual RCP event page, or rather Refuse Fascism, which is a front group for the RCP, they said that they were calling for mounting peaceful protests to topple the Trump-Pence regime.
Right.
It was kind of ridiculous on its face, but like they weren't even calling for like any sort of violent insurrection. And then like Rise and Resist not going to be doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the DHS believed that, and they took it seriously. So they were actually monitoring these groups in the lead up to November 4th to actually see how they could like stop this civil insurrection or whatever.
Well, they have a good
So-
track record, in my opinion, of understanding, things like that, and when they're serious or reading and understanding
they
what you're
fucked up
saying.
This time.
Oh no, I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah,
By the way, if anyone from Homeland Security is
I thought
listening,
you were serious about the fucking, giving people. You're the field marshal. You're the commander, man. Giving people orders.
if anyone from Homeland Security is listening, that was called sarcasm.
Yeah.
I meant the opposite of what I was saying.
Oh, great. Now you're gonna get another visit next week.
You're like, can you explain this? Some satire.
You were talking
novel.
to ex-terrorists.
Yeah, I got all my charges dropped with prejudice, so I
So,
guess
yeah,
I'm just an
well-
ex-marshal or whatever now.
So yeah,
I failed. I got arrested, so they fired me from the anarcho-military.
So yeah, we went down to DC. Christian went down last month, end of last month, beginning of this month. We went down to DC. I was just there for support, kind of just see what's going on. And it was basically preparation for Christian's trial.
Yeah.
So what was ongoing at the time was the second trial. So the first trial was in December of last year, and everyone got acquitted. So then this was like the next trial, and like the first trial, it was like a journalist, 2 nurses, and like just 2 guys, just 2 black bloc guys, just being black blocky, So like they didn't break anything. There was no accusation, so that's what they got off. Well, the second trial was all alleged breakers, like people who like broke shit or whatever. Allegedly.
Breakdancing.
Breakdancing.
Right,
And like I'm just sitting
Breakers
there,
too.
I'm
Electric
sitting there,
Boogaloo.
and they're just like showing. They're showing like video footage, and it just shows, like, like a lot of like this, a lot of people on the left and like activist shit and all this stuff. Like everyone wants to talk about like how like horrible like the government is, like it's all controlling. Like the elites are running everything. But people don't realize that these people are human and they're fucking like they make mistakes and they're stupid. It's like just seeing how bullshit the prosecution, like they didn't get any witnesses. All they had was a police testimony and video footage. Didn't have any witnesses. They didn't do any like fingerprint testing on the weapons or the hammers
and
or
the phones. Like
they didn't even use. So that was another big thing.
They confiscated all the phones, laptops, media devices of anyone who was arrested.
Yeah.
They actually managed to crack a few, and they didn't use anything from any of them.
Yeah, they didn't use, they're trying to like use people's text messages to be like, oh, y'all meet at Logan Circle. You knew it was a conspiracy.
Oh, you meant they managed to crack into the phones.
Yeah. So they got people's
Yeah,
messages.
that was
shit,
the
but
best
they didn't
thing
even
that-
use any of
I
it.
thought you meant they
Yeah.
got white girl wasted and they dropped the phones.
Well, they actually did. I mean, it just showed they were incompetent.
The only thing they used were
basically
like
what
silly
happened,
messages.
The MPD
Yeah.
was really incompetent, and this prosecution
They
had
saw a
nothing.
bunch of nudes and shit.
Probably.
No, seriously. Like, you imagine using that again. But
There's this big blown up picture of someone's dick in court.
They're using
And you're
footage of they're using footage of the alleged breakers, and they say like this one. They're pointing at this one defendant who's brown. They're not white, and they're looking at the video footage, and it shows like, oh, here's defendant so and so, like throwing the trash can and dragging it and throwing it at the Starbucks, and like the whole time I'm looking at the footage, I was like, that's a white guy. You can see that's a white. That's not the defendant. Like, so misidentification,
Right.
like.
You can see here in the middle of the dick pic, that is purely an olive complexion.
Surprising. And like this is another thing about.
at one point
it's another
they
thing
thought-
about the. So a lot
At
of.
one point, they thought trash can Starbucks guy was me.
Yeah.
And then they fixed it by editing the picture and the evidence to say not Valencia.
Yeah. So a lot
I
of
look
stuff.
nothing
A
like
lot of
trash
the.
can guy.
A lot of like. There's been like a whole like supporter narrative that has kind of been weird about this. Is that the whole way that like. There's been a need to like overcompensate to be like, oh, this was a peaceful protest and like they're infringing on people's rights. It was like, come on, we were there and like, come on, it was not a peaceful protest. Like people, I would say it's a riot.
There's the beginnings of a riot. I
Yeah,
would say
it
if
was
kept
it was
on
a
going-
tumultuous protest. People were smashing shit and breaking shit.
Oh yeah, I saw that limo lit on
Yeah, the
fire.
limo
It was
got lit
badass.
off. Come on, let's not like fucking like mince words.
What
and
I
be like,
hated
what's-
was a supporter narrative where sometimes people went so far as to be like, oh, nobody broke anything. Or like,
It was all
oh,
agent
we don't know who it
provocateur.
was. It was the
Yeah,
police.
yeah.
Or it was the
Yeah.
alt-right or whatever. It's like,
I think-
it's like, do you realize like these things have happened throughout history?
Right.
It's actually been a very important part of like any driving force for change. There's
Yeah.
no such thing as like, oh, sit-ins and hunger strikes did everything. That's that's a lie. That's a myth. So like, if you're really about, oh, we have to resist Trump, it's like, what do you think resist means?
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. No, I wholeheartedly agree because I think you're really shooting yourself in the foot if you don't start the argument where it starts
Right.
and, justify having a fucking riot, because there's this. They use it against us all the time,
Right.
like this thing of like, well, this isn't civil protest. Well, what is civil protest, and what would it actually
civil
do?
policing? Fucking throwing
Right.
grenades at people?
Yeah, and at some point, if they draw a little, they put orange cones down, and you're allowed to protest inside of these cones. Well, then are you protesting?
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
a parade at that point.
Yeah.
And it's like, my thing is that what makes me sort of upset about the whole thing is the narratives around it. Is that this event, you could have still used it to promote the ideas of why the event was held, while still trying to help the defendants. It's like, not for nothing, you can point out how the state broke their own laws. There's even like police guidelines on how to deal with so-called violent demonstrations, and the police broke all those. So like, I want to say, hey, look, why should these people be in charge when they can't even follow their own laws?
That was all brought up in court.
Yeah, it was all brought up in court. It's
Everything the
common
MPD
knowledge.
did was illegal. Like,
Yeah.
they can't. There's actually like laws in DC against mass arresting, against using chemical weapons, and all that type of shit.
Yeah,
they,
and
they broke every single one.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that like, why so much crying about what's essentially broken glass on the floor, right? When the state, who's the ones upset about the broken glass on the floor, can't even follow their own rules.
Right.
So you're telling people follow the law, and they can't even follow the law. One of the best things, if you watch some of the J20 videos, there was like a guy who grabbed Lauren Southern's mic, and she's like, "Oh, this is the worst form of protest, blah blah blah," and he's like, "We have a president who doesn't follow the law. Why should we?"
Yeah, I think that
Right.
sums it up. That's kind of sums up the whole day.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. And it's like, nobody hurt or injured anybody.
me-
it was the police who injured bystanders.
for me,
Like,
after the election, I was really drawn by this thing of like the become ungovernable type of mentality. It was like, that makes sense. It's like, we're ungovernable. Like, fuck this guy. We're not gonna fucking obey him. So that's kind of where I thought we were coming from, But then like, where are we at? A year and a half later. I don't know. Everything seems kind of normalized at this
Yeah.
point.
we'll normalize and it's back to normal. We didn't normalize anything that we should have
So-
been doing.
So because of this, because of all the faux pas and whatnot, that trial was acquitted. There was a big, There's this a big key to like destroying the case, and was the use of
The Project Veritas video.
yeah, Project Veritas. So this was the hint. This was like their flaming gun piece of evidence on the whole conspiracy charge was that they had an undercover cop in the planning meetings. Plus, they got video from this right-wing group by this guy James O'Keefe from this group he has called Project Veritas. So they're famous for they made a name for themselves back in like 2009, 2010 with the Acorn stuff. They're pretty much like responsible for like Acorn's demise. So
Yeah,
Acorn,
they also did the Planned Parenthood
they
videos.
did the Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
They're famous for like being undercover and like videotaping liberals and leftists.
Right. No, they got
Yeah.
they got something big happened with them like last year.
Yeah, with the Washington Post. Yeah,
Right,
they tried to
yeah,
do
yeah.
like a fake Harvey Weinstein victim.
Yeah, so what happened was that they had claimed there was only a certain amount of videos that they released to the prosecution as evidence, and this was their basis.
Tell them the video. They took a video of the meeting,
Right.
Undercover meeting. So like they took a video of the meeting,
of
planning the
planning
J20,
meeting for Disrupt J20.
edited to make it seem like we're gonna get all these cells together, and then like when we
Yeah.
say go, we're all gonna destroy these targets and
Right, which was
assassinate Trump.
which was the basis for the conspiracy charge.
Yeah.
What they didn't say was that there was actually like 59 videos that were mostly in the possession of the FBI that they lied to the court and said they didn't have. So when the FBI was subpoenaed to release these videos, it was shown that like these rest of the videos actually directly contradict the claim that there was a pre-planned conspiracy to riot. And that's how Kirchhoff got hit with one Brady violation and then another, pretty much. And that's why they dismissed the conspiracy charge.
The Brady violations are like if a prosecution has evidence against your defendant that could like
Exculpatory evidence.
that could like
yeah.
exonerate them of the charges, they got to present that, and she withheld it. So there's literally a quote from the undercover Veritas guy at the meeting who's like, "Yeah, these guys don't seem like high level. They don't know what's going on."
Yeah, no, what it was, it says, I don't think...
it's like a pretty disorganized thing. I don't think they know what's going on.
I'm gonna we
what
actually have
the-
to take a break real quick, and then we'll just start back up in a couple minutes.
Sure.
She's gotta cook something that's real loud. But something I wanted to say about this, it's kind of funny. Like, if you look at how much they have to doctor information about like riots and Antifa and things like that, that very fact proves that you like didn't have the ability to just go take a picture of this thing that you believe is happening.
Yeah.
Like if you had to fake that picture, then
they're relying on these fucking Nazis to do their fucking undercover work for them. It's just
they deputized James O'Keefe. It's like a cop giving a kid a little plastic badge and saying, "Hey, you want to play police officer?" And like, yeah, it's ridiculous. The direct quote from the video was, "I don't think these IWW guys know about any of the upper echelon stuff. There is no upper echelon
First thing,
stuff."
it still implies that they think that there's some hierarchy to this shit.
Well, it also betrays an extreme misunderstanding of anarchism and shit like that. Because it's like, no, they're a top guy. No, the whole point is that they don't have a top guy.
guy.
Well, that's the thing.
Horizontalist.
Veritas, as a far-right organization, is going off the George Soros conspiracy shit. So what they're saying is like, oh, I don't actually think they know about the George Soros conspiracy, which doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
But by their own admission, the people who are planning these things don't know about the non-existent conspiracy. So there is no conspiracy. There was none from the start, but there is not even.
And this was their key
there isn't any proof by Veritas that the conspiracy.
The prosecution's key piece of evidence hinged on those recordings by this right-wing organization. There's another thing.
The key piece of evidence was Jankum, and that it's real. Or just some other obvious myth. I'm sorry, we got to take a break real quick. We'll be right back. Ooh, one. Okay, we're back.
Okay, so what was my last point about Veritas? I said something before the break.
We were talking. This is why I stopped. And we're actually back. All
Okay,
right, cool.
we're back, and that was a great break.
Yeah. Gregory Pemberton was the lead detective on
There's
the
a lot of
J20
crazy
case,
characters in this case, and one of them would be Detective Gregory Pemberton.
Oh,
So
please tell me about the weird cops.
he was the one that was handed the Veritas information and fucking is pretty much responsible for why the prosecutor, Jennifer Kirchhoff, was in the position that she was in.
Mind you that he has been retweeting Project Veritas and other right-wing organizations for years. And he talks about Black Lives Matter leftist thugs on Twitter. So like, you can understand how this
guy's
guy
a fan
thinks.
of this guy's a fan of 4chan and like the poll aspect of the alt right.
Oh yeah,
He's an alt-right cop.
Yeah.
It was like literally, and like this was the guy that was hired, paid full time, for a year and a half to work on this case. So like the top cop that they decided to like be their like lead investigator is like fucking Nazi adjacent.
Right.
So like as soon as the defense like pulled all this shit out, he showed all his tweets with all the fucking Nazi stuff and like. Yeah.
People are mad that Roseanne had like a TV show, but this is like if she was like the chief of police.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And
It's
believed
so
in Pizzagate and shit.
like, so and like every day in court, this guy's coming in, and like there's like rumors that like there was an affair between him and the prosecutor. It's just crazy shit. That was another thing. Like Kirchhoff wanted to get all these like fucking like. She wanted to pull all this anonymity shit with the police witnesses and stuff, like fear of like backlash. Mind you, like a week after the fucking arrests, like all the J20 defendants were doxxed by Nazis because the MPD leaked their information to the fucking Nazi groups.
Right.
So yeah, she's like claiming all this thing, and she claims that she was sent a note to her home that read "Come fuck me." Sorry, can we keep a statement? It just shows how fucking she probably made it up. Like, who gives a like, it's ridiculous. It's like all the trying to paint herself as like, oh, I'm being this embattled.
I can't imagine someone would actually send that note, but whatever.
A note.
Yeah,
like a letter or just
just like apparently it was like a note.
Check a box, yes or no. Do you like me?
Come fuck me. Yes, no, maybe. Yeah. After the tequila. No.
There's not enough tequila.
Yeah, so
sorry.
Yeah, so like they had this, and then during the second trial in May last month, this cop came in wearing a shirt that read to give his testimony. He had a shirt that read "police brutality" or "doing what their parents should have done," and then underneath that he had a Blue Lives Matter shirt. So it was just like, so that was
under that he had a shirt that said, "I can't believe I ate the whole thing."
Yeah, no, seriously. So then the defense had they entered that guy's shirt into evidence, and then they fucking testified about it the next day. So that guy's whole testimony was like fucking completely discredited. It's like, how are you fucking up this much? It's like, dude, if you want to convince a bunch of fucking anarchists, you convince a jury a bunch of anarchists or fucking conspirators. Like, for me, it just seemed
like...
Why
are you shooting yourself in the foot?
Yeah, it just seemed like such an easy... Like, I thought, like, everyone was fucked, you know, when it first... But then, like, just seeing how incompetent the prosecutor and the cops are, it's just like...
Yeah. You know what? That's...
Like, this is fascism? Like, fascism is absurd, you know? It's just like, these people...
Well... It's the exact same thing that they think about us, that we're competent.
Yeah.
You know, that there's this mechanism, this structure, and that there's a top Antifa guy that's like operating all this shit, and that we're also not George fucking Soros, that we're not also a disorganized mess. I mean, that's the myth on, kind of both sides of this. And that really kind of like tells you something about where they're coming from. Like, I keep thinking about this because of my experience with the DHS and everything, which is that, like, essentially what I gleaned from this whole experience was a two-pronged thing. First point is that the law enforcement authoritarian police state apparatus is extremely overpowered and has a very destructive, like, capacity, but at the same time is also extremely uncalibrated. So it's just this unwieldy, like, it's like a tank that's loose in your neighborhood. Like, it could kill, but it has no idea who to aim at or why.
This is the thing I freak out about with people that obsess over the NSA so much. It's like, oh my god, the NSA's tapping your... We can't have this conversation. You got your phone on. He's like, dude, so wait, the NSA's recording every single... Like, 300 million people in this country. They're recording every single fucking conversation. You know how much data that is? They can't sift through that.
Is there another 300 million people to like sift through all this?
Exactly, yeah. It's like you have to be doing something that piques their interest.
NSA employees. Anyway.
So it's the same shit you see in the gun debates with the mass shootings. Is that it always comes out the FBI was monitoring the guy like weeks before, and so like, how come they didn't do anything? It was like, because they're always monitoring some guy, you know?
Yeah.
They just never know who, because they're awash in information. They don't really know what the fuck they're dealing with, you know?
Yeah.
It was like after 9/11, the whole the mainstream criticism, which kind of like everyone agreed on, was that like, oh, like there was too many security agencies and they didn't like coordinate enough, and that's what happened with 9/11. That's why 9/11 happened. But basically, in the wake of 9/11, you create the DHS and the fucking ICE, and like just create more and more agencies. So they didn't really solve that fucking problem. They're just creating more and more fucking random spook agencies of like spooky government G-men people that just like do the same. What are they fucking doing? They're just monitoring people. And
that's why they compete and fight with each other so much, because they're fighting over the same jobs.
Yeah. That's also why the DHS and the ICE guys are so funny, because they're like, recently created, like, at least the DHS is like these professional level guys as opposed to just grunt cops.
Yeah.
So they have this thing that I think like professional class people get, where their job is extremely existentially meaningless, but there's a big need to like prove that there's a reason they're getting paid that much money.
Their job is like counterterrorism.
Their own job.
Nothing else. Just counterterrorism. Like, what is that?
And their entire job is justifying their own job, essentially.
Yeah, but the reason I brought this up in regards to the police is because the police are extremely powerful, but at the same time, when they kick down your door, they're doing it because they heard on Joe Rogan's podcast or whatever, or Alex Jones's, that you were up to something, and so they're also extremely uneducated and like organized in that they work with each other well, but like not calibrated. It's like accuracy but not aim, or whatever the fuck that thing is.
The wrong information.
Well, yeah, you got people in DHS with PhDs in fucking like civics or something.
Yeah.
I got my PhD in fucking counterterrorism.
So this J20 thing is them waging this, crazy fucking war on an imaginary group of marshals and Antifa super soldiers.
Basically, what I thought was that like the cops thought that because Trump got elected, they could do like fascism. Now they could. Oh, we can just fucking like crack down on protesters, and then they realized like, nah, they can't. Like it's the cops. Like there was this energy in like what I call like the president-elect period. The 3 months leading up to the inauguration, but after the election, like shit was crazy, man. Like fucking like the Bay Area was on fire. Like people were fucking there was protests every day. Like people ousting like mainstream fucking talking heads on MSNBC, like floating the idea that like, hey, maybe the electors of the Electoral College could just like resist. It's crazy shit. Like
Jill Stein's recount.
Yeah, all that shit. There's a side note with that. I saw a report on a Daily Beast about like what happened to Jill Stein's recount money, and she just fucking spent it on herself and her staff. As any politician will do. Yeah. But it was just it felt in the air that there might not like a revolution, but just like maybe there would just be mass protests to the point where the dude just fucking steps down and Democrats take over. So it just felt really weird, you know?
Yeah,
Which
sure.
is why the anarchists went into fucking J20 with the mentality they did, because like they kind of got the green light from the Hillary crowd. It's like, yo, we're gonna have a revolution, resist.
That does not mean that anarchists
So
work
we
for
did,
Democrats.
yeah. It doesn't mean resist, but it's just like, yo, man, if the liberals are down to get dirty, so are we, and like we're gonna get dirty, and we got dirty, and then the liberals were all like, oh no, not like that.
Right.
Like,
We just want to hold
Liberalism
signs
is-
that say destroy Trump and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, or if Hillary were elected, we'd be at brunch right now.
I hate
yeah, that's shit. Like, it's like,
No, I would have gone to the inauguration of the protest regardless of whoever the hell got arrested, elected.
yeah. So now we're at where we're at now, where the case just fucking collapsing. So there was they initially arrested 235 people. They dismissed like 150 in January.
They kept 59 who they said were the core group of people responsible for the destruction or aiding and abetting.
And now what? They've dismissed like 14 of those at this point.
Yeah.
Who knows? Like,
Are there still people?
there was 8.
Yeah, there's still some people.
today.
but
There was
8.
actually 8 people today that
Yes.
just got dismissed. So like,
So it's down to a few
Yeah.
people that are still.
so here's the
including our friend Elizabeth, right?
Yeah, so the key is there's a change in judges. So there's a weird aspect to this case where like the prosecution has been led by white women, so people that you like Hillary type people. This
Sure.
is pretty much they're like basically white yuppie women, you know, but they believe in this law and order mentality.
Yeah.
So like
Well, white women love Law and Order.
yeah,
let me tell
they
you.
do. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I mean the TV show,
Yeah,
but also
they do though.
for a reason though, which is the myth of Law and Order being a thing. That
so
has a function.
all throughout 2017, the judge in charge of the case was Jennifer
Lynn Leibowitz.
Lynn Leibowitz.
She was very pro-prosecution.
Yeah, so there was one journalist on trial last year. He's just like a live streamer, like a fuckhead, just like, and he was charged as being part of the conspiracy. And like Leibowitz like denied the last motion to dismiss on the basis that like that guy's fucking broadcast, his live stream was a recruiting tool to get other anarchists to come fuck shit up.
They think it's like a hive mind.
Yeah, this guy's
Yeah.
just like he's a hippie from like fucking San Antonio.
There's something about this like dissonance that always kind of cracks me up because like in America, in textbooks, they're not going to teach you what anarchism actually means and what the history of it is, and they're not going to really teach you that much about communism or socialism that's not painted through a very specific lens. So you have a lack of information in this thing that is essentially forming your like ideology and your status quo understanding and like what's normal. But then you also have like you go home and watch cartoons and shit, and the supervillains are anarchists and communists supposedly. So if you never took the initiative to go read a history book that is available but isn't going to be handed to you by a teacher, then you just fill the gap with this weird like made up gobbledygook of like, anarchists are like the Foot Clan from Ninja Turtles or whatever. And they believe in
a guy actually used that meme on me the other day. It was like, oh, these are the Antifa, Leninist, anarchist, blah 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 soldiers, and he posts a picture of the Foot Clan. Yeah.
Yeah, no, seriously.
He was saying that was me. Yeah.
There's just people. I'd say that was my thing growing up. Was a popular imagination of anarchists. It was like people who wear all black and like break shit. Like that was it. You know, when I'm fucking like 10, 12 years old, like looking at this shit, it's just like
actually the Captain America comic books are pretty adept at that. They have a villain called Flag Smasher who's an anarchist, and he's always like, no borders, and like punching Captain America.
Is he an ideological anarchist though, or
no, he really is?
Okay, because I was gonna say
that's like actual anarchists.
In like one of the new Batman video games, there's I guess this
Anarchy.
There's a guy named Anarchy.
He's like an environmentalist.
No, but he's a good character in the comic books.
Really?
In the comic books, he's a really good character. In the cartoon, they just made him into like a sadistic villain, and also he was in I think Green Arrow. He was in the Green Arrow TV series. They completely changed his character. But in the comic books, he's actually a decent character.
Oh.
He actually says like things that like an actual leftist would say.
But is he still a villain?
He's not really a villain. He's in like that weird anti-hero crew.
The anti-heroes.
Yeah.
The good guys.
And
the only people.
Batman's whole thing with anarchy is like, oh, he has a good heart. He's fighting for a good cause, but he's misguided in his like tactics. They're pretty much like the same thing that like rich
So that
liberals
still
would
really
say about
bothers me,
anarchists
though.
and
Yeah.
because that's in hand in glove with that
Exactly.
like concept of like this is too far and
Right.
there's this superior like civil discourse
Right.
that you
well,
could
that's
be
exactly the
engaging
same
in.
thing that like a wealthy liberal would say about anarchists in real life.
Yeah, that's what I
Listen,
mean. Like that's
center-right
why that
liberals,
character
and they
kind of
hate us,
bothered
but
me.
like regular liberals be like, oh yeah, we agree with like their egalitarianism and whatever, but you can't be breaking stuff, and
Right. Something that's kind of funny is that like a lot of times these people like to people just abuse the shit out of MLK's like legacy.
Yeah.
But a lot of times they like to point to like he learn from what Dr. King said about peaceful protest and all this shit. And it's like if you really like read up on MLK.
Yeah.
He wasn't exactly peaceful, like because he thought that was a morally
He
superior.
wanted to create confrontation. That was the whole point of being non-biased.
He just didn't have the manpower
Exactly.
to
right.
So it was like an inability to actually get into direct action.
This whole idea, he has a whole thing. The
MLK would have
the
fucked you up
language
if he
of
had the chance.
Riots and language of the unheard. That's a fucking MLK quote. Like, he understood this shit. So yeah, I don't know. MLK is gonna be the new Jesus in 600 years if the shit keeps up. So it's like,
oh yeah,
like they're gonna like actually imagine them actually like white, like he's a white guy. Like MLK's a white guy in like 600 years, he's like actually white.
He's gonna look like Sammy Sosa in all the paintings.
Yeah, he liberated the black people. Oh god damn
for
it.
sure.
That's really my
Jesus.
thought. Is how much is this stuff going to all get distorted in the future?
Well, I mean, a lot of it was distorted the next day, and it's like only getting worse. That's the big fucking battle here. I think in a lot of ways is the any normalcy that people had to thinking that they had an understanding and a thing that they could grasp onto in like media or anything is completely, that idea's out the window now.
Exactly.
And I don't know what to tell you other than listen to my podcast, listen to my friends' shows, follow journalists,
And that type of shit. So,
read
like,
The Intercept,
This idea, so like I think objectivity's dead. This whole idea of like people trying to find like I just want like the facts. It's like that's dead. Everything's stories now. You got to construct your story, and like basically, if you want to be honest, you want to be good at what the hell you're doing and telling the news or telling whatever you decide. Just be honest with what your biases are, and that's what it is. So it's just like, if people know where you come from, they're gonna listen. It's like, oh, if that's your fucking perspective, I know where you're coming from. I was like, don't try to feed me on this bullshit of like, this is the truth. This is what's really good.
Right, you can't tell the objective truth.
Yeah.
You can't do it just as a, you're just going to be downplaying certain shit and I'm trying to make it seem like your actual bias is the truth. My favorite quote about that is Hunter Thompson said you can't be objective when it comes to Nixon. And he obviously was a gonzo journalist who was very much leaned in the other direction and said, you should tell a story the way you are experiencing it through your own mind because that's more honest than, trying to be objective or whatever. But anyway, so how does this whole J20 story kind of end? Or, where are we at right now?
It's not really over. There's still people facing charges. My hope is that they'll just realize how embarrassing this has been for them and dismiss everyone. They're also really obsessive, so I wouldn't mind if they tried to keep a few people, but, my hope is that they'll just give up eventually. As far as, like, where it could go, I'm still disappointed at, like, the rhetoric. I think that in trying to help the defendants, that a lot of the supporters sort of threw away why it happened in the first place.
There was a lot of tone deaf. There was a tone deaf comment that came out of the. So one of the guys, he was an organizer, and they raided his house in April 2017 because I thought he was like an organizer of the event. So they raided his house, and then he became a defendant, and then he got dismissed in the recent batch of dismissals. And then he made a comment to Al Jazeera that was like, "Hope this sends a message to the prosecutors that they can now like stop prosecuting all the people of color and political prisoners."
Yeah.
And I was like, dude. So we're talking about like this is an anarchist event. Like the crowd was what did you say, like 60-70% white?
About 70.
It was a majority white crowd.
Sure.
Dude, like prosecutors interacting with this fucking like they're not treating us like
Yeah, they're not going to extrapolate
this ain't
that
the
to, like,
black.
gang rape
This
cases,
isn't like the
yeah.
Black Panther Party like marching in the streets and fucking shit up. There's a bunch of fucking like white. A lot of them are college kids. Like it's just tone deaf. It's just kind of like no, dude. Like this is a different thing. The tragedy of it, I think, is like a lot of people, especially on the left, a lot of people really like the J20 case. I think it's kind of like overshadowed the more serious like Standing Rock shit.
Yeah.
So like,
Sure.
Yeah, this guy just got sentenced to fucking 36 months or some shit. Like,
and even some of the Charlottesville cases, it's overshadowed that too.
Yeah, it's just like a lot of people that are facing a lot worse, you know. Or it's like this, it's like everyone wants to play the 75 years thing with J20. The realistic thing is like no prosecutor is ever gonna level 75 years, like the full max sentence, even if they're convicted, like of some fucking like white college girl from who went to fucking, you know, like.
That almost never happens.
Yeah, they're not going to do it.
It always happens to black
majority
people.
Of the people majority of people arrested have no criminal record and shit. And if they are arrested, it's for other protest shit. You know, it's not like.
Well, you know, two things about that is like one, the just the pure symbolism of J20 is what's so important.
The limo's whatever. The limo's gonna be in history books.
Well,
you know?
Also the first day and it being a statement and like us looking at the cops and going, oh, these people feel licensed to be Nazis now.
Yeah.
The actual effects of it, as we can see, are, you know, probably not nearly as bad as anything else, and like hopefully everyone gets off and this becomes something to learn from. But the other thing is, though, the left has a real big problem with the oppression Olympics. Like, you got fucked with, dude. That's still a story.
Well, the thing is, like, you should have just talk about your own fucking story. You
right,
know?
and that's
you don't even make this like, oh, we're gonna release all the black people from prison because the J20 trial's gotta quit. Like, what?
That's why the comments bad, because it's not really the same situation. Like, just talk about your situation.
Yeah.
And then say, hey, look,
you're on the same side.
Exactly. And just talk about that separately.
Most people aren't in jail for fucking rioting.
Yeah.
You know, like that's what I'm saying.
It's the everyday stuff that is landing them in jail the most.
There's another aspect of it. A lot of people are gonna. It's like Occupy, Black Lives Matter, like all the social movements. There's people gonna make careers out of it. So there's been one defendant in particular who just got off today. Her name's Elizabeth Leguess, and she kind of ruffled feathers with the support network because like after the arrest, the supporters got together and created a network called Defend J20 Resistance, which was like the official like support network.
I'm not an anarchist, I swear.
Connected to this legal aid group called the DCLP, or the
Dead City Legal Posse.
Yeah, the District of Columbia Legal Posse that helped us out.
Except they call it Dead City.
Elizabeth Leguess is a defendant. She fucking NGO background, you know, she was going to go for a PhD. Her husband, who was also arrested with her, like runs like this fucking nonprofit, and they created their own thing called Drop J20 and their own structure and their own fundraising, and then they just kept doing these statements to the media like, oh, I've never been arrested before in my life. Like, I'm innocent. I'm completely innocent. You know, I don't do bad things.
Yeah, no, they're like, I just got off a bus and I want to join any protest I can, and I just walked into this protest and I got arrested right away before I even knew what was happening.
Basically throwing this whole like, yo, dude, fuck the people that got fucking people that did conspiracy, people that did fucking property destruction, like fuck all you guys. So you're basically throwing all the other defendants under the bus to the point where like, during the mass dismissals in January, she was not included in that. She was part of the 59 that were still left on. And she goes to Al Jazeera and she's like, I don't know why I'm in this group. I didn't fucking do anything. I didn't. You know, so she just got this reputation of just being like, oh, God, dude, this is...
Yeah.
Wow.
This girl's like all about herself.
We're sort of anti-capitalist, but like far from hardcore anarchists, you know.
And the funniest thing about this is her painting herself as this like innocent angel, like I don't fucking hurt him. She was the one leading the opposition research on fucking fucking finding all the information out about Kirchhoff and the prosecution and the cops and putting it all up on his website, and like everyone's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you can't be doxing the fucking prosecutor.
I mean, you can if you want to.
Yeah, you can if you want to, but just don't play that.
Stick to your guns.
Yeah, don't play this fucking card like you're some innocent fucking shit when you're doing this fucking dirty shit that even the hardcore anarchists don't want to fucking. It's like, dude, we're not gonna. They're like, dude, I'm not gonna go to the fucking prosecutor's house. What the fuck is your problem?
Stick to that shit. That's cool as hell. Just don't turn around and then go, well, I am not like these people.
So yeah, there's characters. People probably get careers out of this. You know, there might be a J20 candidate for president one day. Like, who knows? Just one of the, it's like Occupy all over again. That's what it felt like. It's like everyone, like you meet people now, like, oh yeah, I was at Occupy, and it's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like everyone, it seems like everyone you meet now is like, oh, I was at Occupy.
Right.
It's like a legendary story.
I know. It's like, dude, you weren't at. It's like it's the new Woodstock, you know? It's like, oh,
yeah. Well, in this world that is increasingly like normal to be somewhat political, even though you don't understand what the fuck is going on. Like, yeah, that is now. It has social capital.
Yeah.
You know, and there is still like a huge problem. I talk about this with like people when I talk about Antifa and just like protest culture in general. Like, there is a thing that needs to be addressed in the like, you know, riot tourism. It really can take the legitimacy away from certain shit. But I don't really care. Like, they were going to attack us anyway, but still, like, sometimes the guy with the white
There's
dreadlocks.
like a thing amongst anarchists that think, like, they just talk about, like, rioting and breaking shit as, like, the end-all, be-all. It's like, yeah, we really need to, like, create an atmosphere where we just, like, you know, liberate ourselves and, like, just smash when, you know, because, like, at the end of the day, it's like, dude, you're just breaking shit. It's not, you're not, like, giving anybody food, no one's getting housing, you're not really creating communities. It's just a riot. I mean, it is what it is. By all means, fucking destroy this shit. It's fucking great, you know? When I saw them fucking, them construction diggers in Standing Rock get set on fire, it was fucking awesome, you know? Like, sure, Richard Spencer gets punched. It's fucking awesome, you know? But, like, it doesn't build anything. It's nothing new, you know?
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's just kind of destructive.
It should be a, you know, a tool on some level, but not the point.
Yeah, it's not the point, you know? And that's also the whole media narrative around anarchists in general. In terms of the popular idea of an anarchism, the shit that's sexy, which goes for the media, is always the violence, is always the breaking shit, you know?
Yeah.
But then they never do anything with that energy that they've drummed up, you know?
Yeah, so
the point of all that stuff is to create, like, a spectacle, to drum up energy, drum up interest, and then you have to do something with the crowd that you capture, you know?
Yeah, and it's
like,
more
okay,
fun to come up with the first part, and then suddenly no one's got the second part.
We're going to do it again. It's like, they don't... Even as an anarchist myself, my problem is that, like, what people should figure out is, like, how do you utilize all that energy you create? How do you utilize that spectacle, that show that you created to promote anarchism? How do you use it to actually enact
How do you
ideas?
get people with different skills to come together and, like, use that shit to help each other?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, well, that's why I'm a filthy commie, because I believe in forming a board with 12 other people to assess those problems.
No worker state.
To talk about the discussion, the agenda item, which you have to add to the discussion. We need a council to form the council.
Wait, do you
Please
vote,
sign my
I was
clipboard.
I was going to say, do you vote to form a committee, to form a subcommittee to do the action?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Kafkaesque nightmare, but it at least creates the illusion of having a solution to a problem.
I mean, guy, you can't even get 4 guys to agree whether you need a producer or not.
Oh, no. Oh, believe me, we're doomed.
That's why you use democratic centralism instead of consensus?
Yeah. So basically, everyone, unity of action. So, like, y'all have democratic, everyone can say their piece and shit, but when we decide on what we decide
You're going
on...
to do what I say.
I'm just kidding, though. I don't know what the fuck I believe anymore.
I don't know.
And I also don't know if there's that much of a point in going like,
I mean,
hey everyone, I'm this.
My whole thing is to fucking market myself off this shit and utilize it and exploit it. Oops, did I say that out loud? Exploiting activism for, like, personal gain. Oh, who doesn't do that?
Yeah, dude. Let's start a terrible band. Let's
no presidents.
let's sell that Antifa jacket. Did you see that shit?
Oh, yeah.
I'm an Antifa, liberal, communist, Marxist, anarchist, atheistic, Muslim, Satanist.
There you go.
Boom.
Become all of them.
That's pretty much everything Pat Robertson hates. Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. Well, is there anything else?
Because Antifa is a real fascist. So.
I guess just basically,
Right.
if you want to know the point, what was J20 all about? What was the point? It was a signal flare.
Yeah.
It was just basically set the tone for the rest of the shit. You know,
Exactly.
like it was
On
a starting
both
point.
sides,
You know,
yeah.
there's a starting point. Like, I don't think you can understand Charlottesville without understanding J20.
Exactly.
You know, and like without J20, you don't really have that cascading. Like, it kind of blew me for a surprise. Like, after J20, I thought that was it, and then like Berkeley happened, and like all the other shit
Yeah,
happened.
the Milo shut down.
And then I just realized, I was like, oh, this was just like it. Like, the Antifa people came out of the shadows and just showed, like, oh, hey, we exist and we're a factor in this thing that you want to fucking...
Well, I think you also made a good point really early on in this podcast, though, about the not only, like, is there something to be gleaned from understanding, like, the J20 protesters themselves, the Antifa and everyone, there's something to be gleaned from about understanding, like, what motivated the police on that day.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Absolutely,
it's
yeah.
very easy And it's kind of a fucking brain disease that I think a lot of liberals and even leftists have to just use things like, well, they're racist. But it's like, well, what does that mean?
It's an ideological thing for them, too. There's a reason why they waited when they kettled us. They waited until the exact minute that Trump officially took the presidency. Because it was like, okay, this is the end of the Obama era, and Obama held us back and gutted the police department and gutted our nation's defense, and we're taking it back, you know? So pretty much, like, they had wanted to do this for a long time, and they felt like they couldn't do it for whatever. It failed in the past, and like Peter said, it's like, oh, we can do fascism now, let's do it.
Yeah, and these
that's
people...
what was motivating the police to go
It was another aspect of why I thought the prosecution and the whole trials were so bizarre, is that, like, you literally had Kirchhoff, like, dealing with bullshit and just, like, continuing to go with it, even though she knew that she was dealing with such incompetency, that I'm feeling that, like, the orders came from the top. So because the way DC works, it's a federal system. So, like, she's the Attorney General, she works for the Attorney General of the United States. That's what she's prosecuting under. I think she got the fucking go-ahead from Sessions.
Yeah.
You know, I think Sessions is behind it, ultimately, in terms of being like, oh, yo, no, fuck the anarchists. Like, I remember the day after Trump tweeted out, being like, "Oh, fuck you, professional anarchists, for ruining my big day." And shit, you know? Trump knows who we are. He's Antifa.
Right.
He knows who we are. You know, like,
he's like, they come with the helmets and the sticks and the everything. Antifa.
Yeah.
He sounded like a wrestling match announcer.
Well, he's like sounded like what you're singing, which is the song Tequila.
Cut my voice out. Edit in Tequila.
It happened. Literally, my pal Josh Androsky, when that happened, tweeted like, "Can someone edit this?" And within like 10 minutes, someone sent him like the long and then him just going Antifa. But I don't know. Something else that's kind of interesting about their ideology and like why they're doing what they're doing is that, like, you know, I do kind of believe, I agree with you for the most part what you're saying of like, oh, we can do fascism now. My thing with the fascism is, and like racism and all these isms, is that I think that they don't think what they're doing is fascism. And no one really self-identifies as a racist and that sort of thing. Like, they have...
They're just into reality, you know? It's just
right,
how it is.
exactly.
Race
and so
realism.
there's a way of othering these people in a way that we don't understand them. And so, like, you know, when you look at a fucking crazy, overjacked, off the deep end, you know, cop, it's like, well, he was clearly a bad guy, but you can recognize the roots in these ideologies when you talk to people who think that they're normal just like you, but then if you really get into it, they'll go like, well, there is something about the profit motive and like all these like base libertarian ideas that then like bleed into that shit or whatever. And that's like, if you don't have a fucking ideology, you won't be able to nip this shit in the bud and keep people from going off the deep end and becoming the people that are now our fucking problems to begin with. I think. Anyway, that's kind of my thing.
You have to fill the void with something,
Yeah, and I don't know what that is. But, you know, that's the reason I make this shit. And try to do what I can. This is my little brick, all right? But, yeah. Anyway, any closing points, anything? Anyone? You want to plug anything?
Oh, yeah, so we just recorded the last episode of What Would Save the World on Radio Free Brooklyn.
I heard you're rebranding.
Yeah, we're rebranding. We're going to have a new show, hopefully getting off the ground next week, called Hate Fuck Revolution. It's basically like it's basically awesome. Anarchist it's like Murray, but for like activists.
Yeah,
so we're going to find people who hate each other. Either they have a personal beef or they have different political views. Yeah. Get them on and like let's see what happens.
And the test results are in, and you are not the capitalist.
Yeah. And to avoid litigation, we're not, unlike Jerry Springer, we're not going to be paying people $100 a pop to hit each other.
And that'll be on Radio Free
Brooklyn.
Cool.
.com.
All right. Well, if you're in Brooklyn, obviously check that out. Look it up online if you're elsewhere. Very fun show. I've done the first iteration of it. Yeah. Yourself, anything?
Oh yeah, no. Just closing points is that, you know, I just hope everything gets dropped, and I hope they don't continue to prosecute people. But if there are, you know, I would encourage people to still keep supporting. Don't do like they did in the first trial, where like after the defendants got off, a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, now it's over." You know, people don't really keep up with the case. There's still people facing charges.
Yeah.
And also, just like, please, guys, like, if this happens again, like, find a way to not throw people under the bus, you know. Don't use like right-wing talking points like it was agent provocateurs. It's like, no, whatever. Someone broke the windows, you know, but we don't know who it is, you know. You don't have to say anything.
Yeah,
Just like,
absolutely.
leave it blank, wait until everyone gets off, and then you can say whatever, but don't, like, create a precedent that will just make it easier for the Democrats to come back and be like, hey, we're the resistance.
My God, when that guy shot those cops in Dallas in 2016, I cheered for that publicly on Twitter. And like,
yeah, that's where the thank you Dallas chant comes from.
Well, I look forward to the government revisiting me in my home. But as is discussed, you're a young white anarchist, so that probably won't happen.
yeah, exactly. I can say that shit. Yeah.
I mean, that's literally like the kind of statement that black guy made in that story in The Guardian.
Yeah.
And because, the law is a thing we all break all the time, but is selectively enforced, for him, he got thrown in fucking jail for 6 months. And we could probably get away with, fucking around.
He'll break that story.
Really?
Yeah, he writes for Foreign Policy magazine. He wrote the feature on that guy.
Cool.
He did a whole interview with him. Anyway, yeah, that's just my shit.
Rad. All right, well, that's been basically the show for this week. Thanks to my guests, Peter Soeller and Christian Valencia. If you're a listener and you want more content, I just want to do kind of a quick little spiel. We got a little pop recently. I did the Majority Report and I did Chapo, and we're making money. We're still in the hole because I spent a fucking ton of money on a machine that just broke that I used to record this. But we're going to put out 2 episodes a week from now on. One will be free and one will be behind the paywall. So if you go to patreon.com/poddamnamerica, there will be a lot more bells and whistles there, but basically the main mechanism will be a $5 subscription thing where you then get access to the secret other half feed. So what you'll do is sort of copy and paste that RSS feed into your podcast app of choice, and then every week after the regular episode comes out, at some point later in the week, the other episode will come out. And hopefully, if we can get this thing off the ground and get enough people supporting, we can make way more of this. We can make better shit. Luckily, I've been able recently to talk to some very big names about coming on and shit. And yeah, so get on board and help us out so we can all quit working at the Pizzagate restaurant, etc.
Oh shit! How do you find out my alter ego?
I literally work at a restaurant that gets Pizzagate death threats. It's not even the restaurant.
Yeah, exactly.
There's just people that just think all pizza restaurants now are
Pizzagate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
if you have pizza, you got pedos.
The whole
Like,
thing
that's
was
the
that
thing.
cheese pizza. The word the sentence cheese pizza was like a code word for pedophilia or something.
it's because CP is the
Child predator.
yeah. A little child porn, like on
porn,
4chan and shit. That's the abbreviation for.
Fucking
It's fucking crazy,
Yeah, all
but it's also like
restaurants have pedophiles in the
Jesus
basement,
fucking
yeah.
Christ.
it's like someone went to a diner and they were like, over easy on the fly, put some smack on it, and they were like, what does this mean? What does this
Well, that's
mean?
literally what the whole Pizzagate thing is, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the show. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening. And I'm gonna fix these fucking microphones tonight, and then we'll have more and more content and just tons of content. But yeah, sign up for that Patreon. I just dropped the secret Patreon episode yesterday, or today rather, and we did a fucking hot ep on Ralph Nader and my friend Anders' insane knowledge of it, or of him. All right, thanks guys. Bye.